how would the tribes in the Amazon know? You know, and it's like, well, they have creation. But then you go and start doing this, you start researching ancient cultures, myths, and legends, their origin stories, their creation stories, and you start realizing, oh my gosh, humanity isn't a bunch of stupid idiots. They've known all along.
And the stars. You know, I did the
You can't
gospel
get
and the
away from
stars.
it.
Yeah, the gospel and the stars, and the Star Chronicles book that I wrote, it was right there in the sky. And a lot.
We have missionary stories, recent missionary stories that talk about whenever they were talking to tribes in New Guinea or in Africa somewhere, other places where there would be some of the witches that would listen to the gospel story and go, I've been telling this story forever.
Yeah.
What are you guys are acting like this is something new that we don't know about, and I've been telling this forever.
And
then
that
getting
is
excited whenever they realize, you mean the lion has come?
it has come. Exactly. And that is why it's important to start with Genesis. It is important to start with Genesis. Whenever you're talking to somebody, you need them to understand where they came from.
As a Christian, start with your origin story. You
Yes.
won't understand the Native Americans if you just go pick up some random school textbook. I remember I was so mad one time working in the Oklahoma City schools as a tutor. They had Native American lessons for the kids, and like especially for I can't remember what month it was. It wasn't November. Anyway, it was a thing all through Oklahoma City where everybody needed to learn about Native American heritage. They picked the most stupid stories they could find. That
to make them look dumb. To make them look dumb.
Yeah,
they do the same thing.
Stupid stories, but they cut them. They would like cut the beginning and sometimes even the end off of them. And it's like, oral tradition, it was one continuous story. I understand you can't have 788 pages for elementary age kids to read the story, but you can get the beginning in and the end and kind of tie in on things.
Well,
you don't have to just talk about a story that
they do have assemblies and they have guests.
Tools in the sky.
And it's they could have some of the elders come in and speak, you know, and it's the same way with Black Heritage Month. It irritates the dickens out of me that they don't talk about, you know, Frederick Douglass. And
we give you a month so that you feel like you're special, and we want everyone to treat you like you're special, but like special needs. Wink, wink,
basically, instead of telling them, oh, you are already here, you might not have actually come from Africa, you might have actually been part of the Queen of California's kingdom. I mean, just come on. It's so frustrating.
Right.
So frustrating.
The amount of Black people I'm seeing on TikTok that are doing their ancestry DNA tests, and the amount of them that are realizing that they are like full-blooded Native American and have no African in them whatsoever.
I totally believe in the Trail of Tears. They took the brown ones and they moved the brown ones. The not brown ones got put on plantations, and then they called them African. You know, and like I said, it only takes one generation to erase somebody's background. So yeah, a majority the
sharks still go the same line because they throw the black dead ones overboard.
And I forget about that story. Yeah, they've got some of the stupidest stories about the ships that supposedly there were so many of them, but there's only evidence of a few, very few. It wasn't as big of, I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a thing, but I think that was probably more of a thing with the Irish than it was with the Africans.
Again, one of those things, double check your stories, and especially in our society, whenever a story is trying to victimize one group of people and make them seem like they've had it worse than everybody else, and then it's trying to villainize another group of people, check your stories. There's usually an agenda there. Humans are humans. Humans have always been humans. We've always committed atrocities on one another. Get into this, find out, because it's not always just one way or the other. Again, a lot of the powers that be, a lot of the people who want things to go their way will tell stories their way and try to get everybody to believe that they are a victim, that they are special needs, or, whatever. It just, Native Americans weren't a bunch of naked savages. And not everybody with dark skin came from Africa.
That's right. That's right.
And not everybody with dark skin was a slave. So, just one of those things. Again, check your stories and go back to the origins on things. Do your research. You'll have a much better understanding rather than starting in the middle or reading somebody else's version of the story. That was absolutely eye-opening for me as a not even 20 years old yet, like 18 to 19 years old, young adult, new adult, whatever you want to call it, going to Oklahoma City and seeing just how degrading those textbooks were. And these poor little elementary age kids getting so bored with these stories and not understanding what's going on. And then by the end of the chapter that they're on going, wow, Native Americans are really dumb, aren't they? And it's like, no, they're not.
No, yeah, no wonder. No wonder we've got these attitudes.
Yeah,
kind of like
my entire classes, I made them all close the book after they were done. And then I told them the whole version of the story. Them and their teacher were like, oh my gosh, that was a cool story. And it's like,
yeah.
Oh,
and so often they're just given names and dates, and I was helping one child study for a test one time, and he had this list of names and this list of dates that he had to put, and he was having trouble with Marco Polo. And I said, well, what did Marco Polo do? He's like, well, I have no idea. Well, don't you know who Marco Polo was? No. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Marco Polo is one of the most interesting stories in history. And
I've seen a lot of my generation, the millennials, are like getting so ticked off. I cannot tell you how many of my friends my age are so ticked off because as we've gotten older and we go do our own research, we're like, history is cool. I hated history in school. I didn't. I loved it.
But you were homeschooled. I hated history in school. In homeschooling,
and even with my husband's sons, like we've talked about, I love history. I'm a history nerd. I'll pull up all sorts of random facts. And his youngest one time was like, Catherine, you make history so interesting. It's my least favorite class in school. I hate it. He's like, but you make it way more interesting.
Because it's usually just some monotone coach that doesn't even want to be teaching the class. That's what I ran into.
And it's just coming in, this is what you're going to need for the test. Please pass so I don't have to see you again kind of attitude. And there's not the human story there.
Yeah.
This is your story. This is the stepping stones that brought you here. And, did you know this was going on at the same time as this? And it just
that's where Diana Warring, if you're homeschooling, even if you're not homeschooling, even if you are not homeschooling, even if you don't have children at home anymore, if you're a grandparent, look up Diana Warring's What in the World series. It's an audio series you can play in the vehicle while you're traveling or whatever. That's what we did, you know, we do a lot of traveling out here, and I stuck those in. And she makes history so much fun, and she ties these things together, and she does it from a biblical perspective. Now, you know, she doesn't understand some of the timeline issues and stuff that we're seeing today, but it gives you a much rounder, much more full version of history than you're going to get anywhere else. And she does have a whole curriculum and stuff now too.
And she ties in. One of the things I loved about her is that she was tying in, you know, while she's talking about what Genghis Khan is doing, she's tying in, here's what the Roman Empire was doing at the same time.
And yeah, she was tying it together in different parts
one of those things that, you know, do you know when the last time the guillotine was used? 1977. 1977 was the last time the guillotine was used. Like, you think, whenever you think guillotine, you think Marie Antoinette and stuff.
Right. You don't think. Yeah. And our.
You don't think bell bottoms.
And our nation, let's see, how many years ago was that the United States actually purchased a whole bunch of guillotines? So the United States government has an inventory of guillotines that they have recently purchased in the last 10 or 15 years. It is a fact. So if you don't know that history, and if you can't tie it in together, it's been, and I believe purposely, be it the enemy or whatever, has been purposely disjointed for us so that we're not putting the pieces together.
And then there's also a line of, I have seen people put too many of the pieces together and they cannot mentally handle it. So I don't know that humanity was ever truly meant, since the fall anyway, to handle as much information as we have access to now.
Have access to today. Yeah. At least not in this short amount of time. If we lived longer, maybe.
There is bliss to some ignorance.
Yeah.
And there's also, this is where I very often caution people whenever they do start taking a deep dive into these stories and stuff like that, and then start realizing that so many things with different connect with different conspiracy theories. It's one of those things, don't get too invested in it, and just understand what you can control and what you can't.
Right. But so, you know, if you like to research, enjoy the study, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, if you're following somebody,
Bibles and put them in a waterproof container with guns and ammo and bury it in a field somewhere and put tin foil on your windows and stuff, you might just want to go read Peter Rabbit and be okay. Just calm down. It's just not that big of a deal, you know?
Yeah. We found out really quick during the fires of 2017 that we could have had, I mean, we were prepped as much as we could be at the time, and had the fire hit our house, I mean, and it came so close, I mean, it was here, we would have had nothing left.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you've got a cellar or something and you've got some things stored down there, that's great. You know, being prepared for, you know, the inevitable dust storms of life is a good idea, but don't live your life in that. So if you're following somebody on YouTube, who's constantly this terrible thing's happening, that's terrible things happening, whatever, you know, don't fill your life with that. Don't fill your life with that. I love
your life with doomsaying and fear.
Yeah.
If your eyebrows are now living up to your hairline, you need to stop.
Yeah. The only one that we watch consistently now is John Levi. And he's not. I mean, he's living basically off grid. He travels with his dog and he enjoys, you know, looking into history and studying this stuff. He's not a huge prepper. He's not a doomsday person. He's finding his faith as he goes. And it's just interesting stuff. And that is the only one.
Things like, it's natural human It's natural for humans to want to catastrophize everything. It's natural for us to want to catastrophize everything. So, for me, I personally stay away from a lot of the political stuff and whatnot. It amps me up too bad. I cannot handle it. Stuff like this, reading myths and legends and putting a cryptozoology in with it and history and this and that.
A variety of things.
Fine.
That's where you've got a variety. Yeah.
But then whenever
it comes just get a variety.
I have to really search and find somebody who is going to put an optimistic spin on it, because I will absolutely sit there and catastrophize everything. Right. And then there will be no reason for me to wake up in the morning. Why be here? So
I've got followers that send Bear Independent. And
no,
I personally just don't like him. And that's just a personal thing.
Some of his stuff.
Some of his stuff, I appreciate some of the information that he shares. I appreciate some of the work that he does, but he's an arrogant jerk, from what I can tell. And I don't want to watch a whole lot of it. I appreciate whenever people send me stuff and then tell me what minute in the video is the interesting point, and they're learning to do that. That way I can kind of fast forward to what the point is, because if I sat there and watched his stuff all the time, I would be depressed.
My husband really enjoys city prepping and that channel on YouTube. Okay. And some of his older stuff was very, very good. He lives in California, so he lives with a lot of restrictions, and he's still trying to be a prepper in spite of that. So he's got some really great information, really great tips, ideas and stuff, but he tries very hard to not be doomsday like, and he tries to talk about that, how he's not saying it's the end of the world, but it's kind of the end of the world and you need to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, then it's probably going to be the end of the world for you. And it's like, I can't handle it, because
and different people can handle different things, right?
We need to kill 3 lions and we need to put them in the pit and keep them safe because we need that meat for your baby.
Yeah.
Go do it now. Here's your club. Go do it.
Well, I know that I've got some Catholic friends that follow Catholic Prepper. That might be what he's called. I can't remember. But his is pretty optimistic, and he does a good job. And he's got I'm on his newsletter. I don't open a lot of his emails, but that one's a good one because he's got a good perspective. I like the digital prepper because they're talking about, like your digital devices and new things that are coming out. And that's just a good thing to know. But yeah, find something that fits your personality that's not going to pull you down. Right. And Catherine and her siblings have complained about Paul and I in our doom and gloom that we like to watch.
Full disclosure. There are times with my mom and dad where I'm like, well, this was nice. I gotta go do something else now. And it's like, everything
and it's stuff that
life is gonna blow my brains up.
And it's stuff that excites us. It's fun for us. Paul likes to watch Mike Decker. I don't care so much for him. He's got pretty dogs, but
he ain't arrogant or nothing.
But Paul says he's not arrogant or nothing, but he smokes a little herb every once in a while or whatever. Yeah, he's giving me 2 cents in the background. But we've all got somebody, and it's good in a family to get a variety. Yeah. So when Catherine and Stephen come over, Stephen watches some things, Catherine watches other things, Paul watches some things, I watch other things. So we've got a variety of perspectives that we're getting here, and we can sit down and we can have a conversation about it, usually, and not a problem. And
something I can think of that has come up between my mom and I is that with the election stuff, my mom is like, the cities, y'all gonna get nuked. Like, cities are gone.
I did not say that. I have just been telling
the cities are the last place you want to be, and I'm like,
I have definitely been telling people that if you can avoid the cities until February, I'm not saying anything's going to happen. But if it's going to happen, it's more likely to happen in the cities.